Imagine just for a moment that money was standing right in front of you, not as paper, not as numbers in a ledger, not as metal in your hand, but as a living presence, a being with eyes that see, ears that hear, a heart that responds. Imagine it standing there, quietly watching you, listening to every word you speak about it, feeling every emotion you attach to it. Now, my friend, let me ask you something very simple. If money were a person, and it could hear the way you talk about it, would it want to stay with you? Would it feel welcomed, or would it feel blamed, feared, mistrusted, chased? Imagine money hearing you say, "You're never enough." Hearing you sigh, "You always leave me." Hearing you whisper, "I just can't keep you, you slip through my fingers." What kind of relationship would that create? You see, this is where the great mistake begins. It is not that you do not want money. It is that you have been taught to speak to it in the wrong language. The world has trained you to talk to money as if it were a cruel master, a cold stranger, a distant thing that sometimes visits and often abandons. They told you to fear it, to chase it, to cling to it, to doubt it, to suspect it. And then they wondered why it never felt steady, why it never felt warm, why it never felt like home. The world taught you to chase money. I tell you, money was meant to follow. From childhood, you were instructed in a certain liturgy, a dark religion of lack. You heard it at the dinner table, in the streets, in school, in the conversations of those you loved. The phrases may differ from country to country, but the spirit is the same. You must work harder if you want more. You must suffer first, pay your dues, bleed and sweat, and perhaps one day life will reward you. Money is out there somewhere, in the hands of a few fortunate ones, and you must somehow go and get it. You are not one of the lucky ones. You are ordinary. You are poor folk. God has decided who will be rich and who will be poor, and you must accept your lot. Some of you heard even harsher words. People like us never have much. The rich are wicked. If you become wealthy, you will lose your soul. Don't dream too big. You'll only be disappointed. And so, without realizing it, you accepted a lie. You came to believe that money was outside of you, far from you, and that you had to wrestle with life to get even a small portion of it. You believed that there was some distant power, luck, fate, God, the economy, other people that decided your portion, and that you were at its mercy. You bowed your head to a false god, the god of circumstances. Tonight, I have come to tell you something that may offend your old beliefs, but it will liberate you if you dare to accept it. They lied to you about manifesting money, not because they were evil, not because they wanted to harm you. They lied to you because they themselves were blind. They spoke from their own state of consciousness, and their state was one of limitation, fear, and separation. They could not give you what they did not have. They could not teach you what they did not know. They taught you formulas of effort and sacrifice. They taught you to measure your worth by your labor. They taught you that money was reluctant, hostile, hard to reach. And so you began to live a life of chasing shadows, never realizing that the light that cast the shadow was within you all along. Listen to me carefully. Money is not what you think it is. Money is not matter. It appears as matter, yes. It takes the form of paper, coin, metal, ink, numbers on a page. But these are only garments. If you stop at the garment, you will miss the life that wears it. Money is consciousness clothed in form. Everything you see in this world is consciousness objectified. Every object, every event, every condition began as a state within someone's imagination. Money is no exception. It is not a special category. It is not outside the law. Money obeys the same law as everything else in your experience. It moves according to the state you occupy. You were told that money responds to effort. I tell you, money responds to state. You were told that money comes in proportion to how hard you work. I tell you, money comes in proportion to how fully you assume that you already have. You were told that your job, your employer, the economy, or other people decide how much you will possess. I tell you, your own inner conversation, your own inner feeling of wealth or lack draws to you or pushes away every form money takes. Think back over your life. Think of the times when money came easily, almost without effort. Perhaps it was a gift, an unexpected inheritance, a sudden opportunity, a chance meeting, a cancelled debt. Did you strain to make that happen? Or did it arrive almost mysteriously, as though something unseen were arranging things in your favor? Now remember the times when you labored tirelessly and saw little fruit. You pushed, you struggled, you worried, you wrestled with numbers and calculations. You lost sleep over bills, and still it seemed as if money slipped through your fingers. If money were truly only a product of effort, your hardest years would have been your richest. But for many of you, the opposite has been true. Some of your most prosperous moments came in seasons of ease, of faith, of openness, of quiet confidence. And some of your leanest years were those in which you lived in the tight fist of fear. Why? Because the secret was never the effort of your hands. It was always the attitude of your heart. You have seen with your own eyes people who labor from morning to night, year after year, and yet remain in scarcity. You have also seen those who seem to move lightly, almost playfully, and yet money gravitates to them. You call them lucky, but luck is only a name the ignorant give to law. They do not yet understand. If you look closely, you will notice something. The unlucky one has an inner story of struggle, of never enough, of being overlooked. The lucky one has an inner story of sufficiency, of possibility, of things always work out for me. The world tells you to imitate their actions. I tell you, imitate their state. You have been told that God decides who will be rich and who will be poor, as if God were some distant king in the heavens, distributing coins to his favorites. But the God of whom I speak is not outside you. The true God is your own wonderful human imagination. And that God, living as your I am, has given you full authority to shape your world. When you say with feeling, I am poor, you are using the name of God in vain. When you say with feeling, I am always struggling with money, you are decreeing a law over your own life. When you whisper, I am just not the type to be wealthy, you are denying the very nature of the I am within you. They told you to ask a distant God to send you money. I tell you to recognize that the God who creates money's flow is your own consciousness, and that he lives in you as you. They told you to humble yourself as a beggar. I tell you to rise as a son. They taught you prayers of pleading. I teach you prayers of assumption. They told you to wait for a miracle. I tell you to become the miracle. You may ask, Neville, are you saying that all that I have been taught about working hard and saving and being responsible is worthless? No, I am not saying that. Work has its place. Skill has its place. Wisdom has its place. But these are channels, not sources. They are instruments, not causes. The cause is always a state of consciousness. If you begin in a state of lack, you can work 12 hours a day and still feel empty. If you begin in a state of abundance, even the smallest action can be multiplied. Money obeys states, not effort. Money is like a shadow. You cannot grab the shadow directly. You must move the body that casts it. If you wish to change the shadow, you do not fight it on the wall. You adjust the light and the object that stands in that light. Likewise, if you wish to change the money that appears in your world, you do not wrestle with numbers alone. You change the state of consciousness from which those numbers arise. Tonight, I invite you to do something most people never do in an entire lifetime. Question everything you were taught about money. Question the idea that you must suffer first. Question the idea that more pain produces more prosperity. Question the idea that God has favorites. Question the idea that you are not one of the chosen ones. These are lies born from ignorance of the law. The law is simple, as within, so without. According to your faith, your state, be it unto you. If you believe yourself to be endlessly struggling with money, you will find circumstances that echo that belief. If you believe deeply and quietly that you are always provided for, you will find life arranging itself to support that assumption. You may look at your present bank balance and say, but Neville, this is the truth. No, my friend, that is not truth. That is only evidence of what you have previously assumed to be true. It is the fruit of an old state. Truth is what you now dare to assume. Your balance is an echo. Your state is the voice. Change the voice, and the echo must change. Change the state, and the shadow must rearrange. So when I say they lied to you about manifesting money, I am saying this: they taught you to worship the shadow and ignore the light. They taught you to change the effect and ignore the cause. They told you to chase what was meant to follow your state. But tonight, that lie can end. Tonight you will stop begging money to come, and you will begin instead to stand in the state of the one who already has. Tonight, we will not try to manipulate external conditions. We will reach for the only true power you have ever possessed, the power to assume a new state. By the end of this message, you will never speak to money the same way again. You will not see it as something far away, as a reluctant visitor, as a cold object to be hoarded or feared. You will see it as a faithful servant, a reflection of your inner wealth, a shadow cast by the light of your imagination. You will understand that the language money truly understands is not the language of effort, panic, or begging. It is the language of state, the language of I am. And as you learn to speak that language quietly, inwardly, confidently, money will begin to respond. Not because I say so, not because you hope so, but because law must fulfill itself. Tonight, I am not here to give you a trick. I am here to give you back your authority. You will see that it was never they out there who decided your portion. It was always you, in here, who accepted a certain image of yourself. Before this night, perhaps you accepted the image of the struggler, the unlucky one, the one who just wasn't meant for wealth. But you do not have to carry that image one step further. If you will walk with me in this message, if you will dare to test what I teach, not just listen, but test, then money will cease to be a tormentor and will become a companion. You will cease to ask, will I ever have enough? And begin to realize that the question itself belonged to an old state that no longer has any power over you. They lied to you about manifesting money because they thought money was the master and you were the slave. Tonight I tell you, you are the master, and money is only one of your many obedient servants. Before this is over, you will know it in the only way that counts. You will feel it. And once you feel it, no man, no book, no circumstance will ever again convince you that you are at the mercy of anything outside yourself. You have been taught to see money as an object. Paper, coins, numbers in a ledger, figures written in ink. You open a wallet and you say, this is money. You open a book of accounts and you say, this is money. You look at a balance and you say, this is how much I have. But I tell you now, with absolute certainty, that this is not money at all. These are only the garments money wears. They are not the thing itself. They are the shadow on the wall, not the one who casts it. Money is not something you get. Money is something you reflect. It is not an object. It is a response. It is not a substance. It is a relationship. It is not a thing that exists on its own. It is the mirror of the state you live in. You do not get money. You reflect it. If money were only numbers, then every man who earned a great deal would keep it. If money were only paper, then every woman who touched it would be secure. If money were only metal, then every vault would be the same. But you know, this is not true. You have seen men who earned fortunes and lost them again and again. You have seen those who gained everything and still lived in fear. You have seen heirs drown in wealth and yet die poor in spirit and circumstance. And you have seen too the quiet soul who never handled huge sums and yet walked in steady provision, in peace, in quiet expansion, never lacking what was needed. Why? Because money is not the cause. Money is the effect. It is not the source. It is the shadow. A man does not lose money because the numbers turned against him. He loses money because the state in which he lived could not sustain it. A woman does not keep money because she counted it carefully. She keeps it because her inner life is one of order, confidence, and sufficiency. You may try to guard a river with your hands, but if the spring that feeds it is unstable, the river will rise and fall, no matter how tightly you grip. So it is with money. You may guard every coin, but if your inner state is one of lack, fear, and distrust, the flow will always betray you. I have watched this law operate in every walk of life. I have known men who earned more in 1 month than others earned in 5 years, and yet they lived always one step from ruin. Money ran through them, but it never rested with them. It came in torrents and vanished like mist under the morning sun. Why? Because inwardly they were still poor men. Their thoughts were anxious, their expectations small, their conversations full of loss. They believed, secretly, that wealth was temporary and danger was permanent. And so, life obeyed that belief. I have also known women who lived quietly, who never boasted of riches, who never displayed abundance, and yet they never lacked. Doors opened. Needs were met in gentle and often invisible ways. They did not live with the inner noise of what if. They lived with the feeling of I am always provided for, and the world reflected it. So I say again, money is not what you think it is. Money is not paper. Money is not coins. Money is not numbers. Money is a relationship between your inner state and the outer world. It is a response from life to what you quietly consent to being true about yourself. You may say, but Neville, the bank gives me money. My employer gives me money. My employer gives me money. My business gives me money. No, they are only channels. They do not give you money. They merely move figures from one place to another in obedience to a deeper decree that was issued long before the figures ever appeared. You must reverse the way you have been trained to think. It is not, I have money, therefore I feel safe. It is I feel safe, therefore money appears. It is not, I will believe when I see. It is I will see when I believe. Every man and woman is living in a private economy that no newspaper can measure. Two people can earn the same wage, live under the same roof, shop in the same streets, and yet one will live in terror and the other in peace. One will feel always on the edge of collapse, the other always on the edge of expansion. The difference is not in the figures. The difference is in the state. Money is a faithful servant to the state you occupy. It never betrays you. It never disobeys you. It never acts randomly. It only expresses, again and again, what you have already accepted as true of yourself. This is why I say you do not get money. You reflect it. If you reflect fear, money shows you reasons to feel afraid. If you reflect trust, money shows you reasons to feel at ease. If you reflect lack, money shows you situations that mirror lack. If you reflect sufficiency, money shows you pathways of provision. You see, the world does not argue with you. It agrees with you. Quietly, faithfully, relentlessly. You say inwardly, I am always just barely making it. And the world replies, so be it. You say inwardly, money never stays with me. And the world replies, as you wish. You whisper, I am always taken care of. And the world says, it shall be done. And you call these things chance, luck, economy, circumstance. But they are neither chance nor fate. They are obedience. The blind spot of mankind is that he tries to change money without changing the state that projects it. He tries to scrub the mirror instead of washing the face that is being reflected. You do not need to fix money. You need to relocate your identity. Ask yourself now, honestly, without judgment, who am I when no one is watching? Who am I when I think of money in the silence of my own heart? Am I the struggler? Am I the one who is always hoping it works out? Am I the one who feels slightly behind life? Or am I the one who expects quietly to be supported? Do not answer too quickly. The true answer is revealed not by what you say you believe, but by what you habitually feel. Feeling is the language of the subconscious, and the subconscious is the womb of money. Many people say, I believe I will have abundance, yet their feeling is one of pressure, of tension, of waiting. And waiting is not belief. Waiting is testimony that the thing is not yet accepted as real. The man who truly lives in abundance feels no urgency. The woman who truly lives in provision does not tremble at delay. They move with rhythm, not with panic. They speak with steadiness, not with desperation. Their inner world is not loud. And because the inner world is quiet, the outer world is kind. Now let me show you something else. You have surely observed, you have seen people who make a lot and yet live in constant contraction. Every expense pains them. Every fluctuation frightens them. They may have more zeros than you, but they live more tightly than you. Why? Because inwardly, they are not rich. They merely possess a passing symbol of wealth without the state that sustains it. You have also seen people who handle little and yet live generously. They give without fear. They receive without shock. They do not cling, because inwardly they feel supplied. They live in a rhythm of circulation rather than anxiety. And somehow, mysteriously to the observer, they are always met. So tell me, who is richer? The one who hoards large sums in terror, or the one who moves small sums in peace? Richness is not a quantity, it is a quality of being. And money merely wears the color of that quality. This is what I mean when I say that money is imagination condensed. It is not cold matter into which life is later poured. It is life that has already crystallized into matter. You think the mind is here, and the world is there. That is the great illusion. The world is the mind made visible. The bank is the mind written in numbers. The purse is the mind folded into leather. The account is the mind translated into figures. Nothing appears in money that was not first accepted in consciousness. I have watched over and over again the strange helplessness of those who try to fix their finances while refusing to touch their inner assumptions. They change jobs, they change countries, they change partners, they change strategies, and still the same pattern follows them like a shadow at noon. Why? Because they carry the same state wherever they go. You can run from a creditor, but you cannot run from yourself. You can cross oceans, but your beliefs cross with you. You can change currency, but you cannot escape the inner economy that prints the currency of your life. This is why I say that money is spirit clothed in form. It is a symbol pressed out of consciousness. It is not dead. It is not inert. It is alive in the sense that everything that responds to consciousness is alive. When you see this, you begin to understand why force never truly works. You can force yourself to save, and yet feel strangled. You can force yourself to invest, and yet feel haunted. You can force yourself to earn, and yet feel empty. Because force belongs to the surface, and money belongs to the depth. As long as you think money is an object, you will fight with it. As soon as you realize it is a response, you will begin to converse with it. You will stop asking, how much do I have? And you will begin asking, who am I being? For the question, who am I being, determines every sum that will ever pass through your hands. A man who is being the one who is always supported will find support. A woman who is being the one who is always behind will find confirmation. Not because the world is cruel, but because the world is faithful. There is no injustice in this law. There is only reflection. Life is a mirror that does not flatter and does not condemn. It reflects. If you look into a mirror and see dust upon your face, you do not argue with the mirror. You do not beg the mirror to change. You wipe your face, and instantly the reflection obeys. Money is that kind of mirror. Now notice how gently this truth frees you from blame. You no longer need to curse your childhood. You no longer need to blame the economy. You no longer need to fear the decisions of powerful men. For you now know that the only power that truly decides your money is the state you consent to occupy. This does not mean you must strain. This does not mean you must fight. This does not mean you must force belief. It simply means that you must become aware of how you feel when you think of money, aware of the quiet sentences you repeat to yourself, aware of the secret image you hold of who you are in relation to abundance. For whatever that image is, life will continue to print it in the currency of your world. You were taught to think in terms of earning. I teach you to think in terms of being. You were taught that having comes after effort. I teach you that having follows assumption. You were taught that money comes from outside. I teach you that money comes from the state you occupy inside. And when you truly grasp this, not merely as an idea, but as a felt truth, you will feel something inside you relax. A tightness you have carried for years will begin to loosen. The pressure of trying to make it will soften into the quiet confidence of it is being made. You will no longer feel as though you are standing before a locked gate, begging to be let in. You will begin to feel as though you are standing inside a house that was always yours. This is the first great unlearning, and without it, nothing else I will say can truly take root. For until you stop seeing money as an object, and begin to see it as a reflection, you will continue to fight the shadow and forget the light. But now you are beginning to see, you are beginning to sense that the secret has never been in the figures. It has always been in the one who looks at the figures. And once the one who looks begins to change, the picture he looks at must change with him. This is not philosophy. This is law. And if you will stay with me as we go deeper, you will soon see exactly why chasing money repels it, and why, the moment you shift from chasing to being, money will begin, quite naturally, to follow. You have been taught that if you chase money with enough intensity, enough effort, enough sacrifice, it must eventually surrender to you. You have been told that pursuit is power, that struggle is noble, that exhaustion is the price of wealth. And yet, if you look quietly at life, without romance and without fear, you will see a paradox standing plainly before you. What you chase runs. What you grasp tightens. What you beg withholds. This is not punishment. This is not cruelty. This is the nature of consciousness. When you chase money, what are you truly declaring? You may say with your lips, I want more, but with your inner state, you are confessing, I do not have. And life never answers words. Life answers states. It does not respond to what you hope for. It responds to what you assume to be true of yourself now. The vibration of desire is not the vibration of possession. The vibration of desire is hunger. The vibration of possession is fullness. And life always feeds back the vibration you sustain, not the result you dream about. When a man says, I am trying to get money, he is really saying, I am the one who does not have. When a woman says, I am working so hard to finally be secure, she is secretly stating, I am presently insecure. And the world, faithful mirror that it is, answers not the future hope, but the present identity. This is why so many who chase money run for years and feel as though the ground beneath them is always just ahead, never under their feet. They are running in the very state that creates distance. They are affirming lack while trying to reach abundance. Need is not neutral. Need is a command, and what it commands is more needing. I have sat with men who built businesses in sheer desperation. They rose early, they slept little, they drove themselves mercilessly. They spoke always of pressure, of survival, of making it before it's too late. For a season, money came. It often does, but it came like a nervous guest, not like a companion. It came in spurts, not in peace, and just as quickly as it arrived, it found reasons to leave. Lawsuits, bad partners, sudden losses, unforeseen disasters. The outer story changed, but the inner tension never did. And because the inner tension never changed, the pattern never changed. I have known gamblers who pursued money with fiery obsession. They chased the thrill of sudden gain. For brief moments they tasted large sums. For brief moments they felt powerful. But their inner state was not one of possession. It was one of hunger. It was one of lack, dressed in excitement. And because hunger was the state, loss was the answer. What they gained in an hour, they bled away in a night. What they held in their hands, they could not hold in their being. And so it slipped through their fingers again and again. I have known exhausted workers who believed with all their hearts that toil itself was holy, that rest was dangerous, that if they stopped striving for even a moment, the world would collapse. They gave their bodies, they gave their time, they gave their youth, and still they lived in quiet fear. Why? Because inwardly, they never assumed that supply was natural. They assumed it had to be wrestled from life, and life agreed. You see, chasing money is not neutral action. It is an inner confession. It is the confession of absence. It says, it is not with me, it is not mine, it is separate from me. And separation is the very wall that keeps it away. The man who chases money feels secretly pursued by lack. The woman who drives herself relentlessly feels quietly haunted by insufficiency. And fear, no matter how well dressed, is always creative. Now hear this carefully, for it will sound strange to the mind trained in effort. Money flees the one who needs it, and follows the one who assumes it. Needing is not wanting. Needing is identity. Needing says, without this, I am undone. And the moment you build your identity on something absent, absence becomes your companion. But assuming is entirely different. Assuming does not ache. Assuming does not chase. Assuming rests. It says, this belongs to me by nature, and what belongs by nature is never hunted. It is inhabited. You never chase your name. You never chase your reflection. You never chase your shadow. They follow because they belong. So when you stop needing money to prove that you are safe, it begins to prove your safety. When you stop begging money to validate your worth, it begins to express your worth. When you stop running after money as though it were your savior, it begins to behave like a servant. This is why effort alone has never been the key. Effort without identity is labor without inheritance. You can strain as a stranger and still remain outside. You can rest as an heir and watch doors open. The world has taught you that possession follows pursuit. I tell you that possession follows assumption. This is not laziness. It is alignment. The river does not strain to be wet. The sun does not strain to shine. The air does not strain to inherit. Now let me speak plainly to the silent confession beneath most labor. Many people do not chase money because they love abundance. They chase money because they fear not having, and fear always multiplies what it touches. Fear of not having creates situations of not having. Fear of losing creates conditions of loss. Fear of insufficiency guarantees insufficiency, not because life is cruel, but because fear is a state and states must express themselves. The man who works from joy invites gain. The man who works from terror invites debt. The woman who creates from love opens channels. The woman who creates from panic closes them. You may perform the same action on the surface, but consciousness is the difference maker. Two men may open the same shop. One opens it with the quiet assumption, life supports me. The other opens it whispering inwardly, if this doesn't work, I am ruined. Their shelves may look the same. Their counters may be identical. Their efforts may be equal, but their invisible premises are worlds apart, and their results will follow the premises, not the procedures. The one who assumes support will see help arise mysteriously. Favor will meet him at intersections he did not plan. Burdens will lift without explanation. The one who assumes ruin will see friction multiply. Delays will grow teeth. Obstacles will appear where none were foreseen. You may call this luck. I call it obedience. So long as you chase money as something you lack, you will continue to prove that you lack it. This is not a moral judgment. It is a mechanical law. You were taught that effort is noble, but effort without inner shift is only repetition of the same state, and the same state can only reproduce the same world. Now let me show you where the true reversal happens. The moment you stop asking, how do I get money? And begin asking, what must I assume to be the one who naturally has? Everything changes. One question keeps you in pursuit. The other moves you into possession. It is not about doing less. It is about being differently. If you assume you are supported, your actions change tone without you forcing them. If you assume you are abundant, your decisions soften. If you assume you are already safe, your movements become intelligent rather than desperate. And strangely enough, when desperation leaves you, money begins to recognize you. Money as spirit clothed in form responds to relationship, and the relationship of need is one of imbalance. It says, you are above me, I am below you, and imbalance breeds absence. But the relationship of assumption is one of unity. It says you and I walk together, and unity breeds flow. This is why the one who truly has never looks as though he is chasing. He moves differently. There is no stampede in him. There is no hunger in his eyes. He does not lunge at opportunity like a man drowning. He responds quietly because he is not trying to be saved. He is expressing who he already believes himself to be. This calmness is not passivity. It is power without panic. And panic is the very thing that has kept so many circling the same financial deserts for decades. You were told, work harder and you will finally relax. But you relaxed only when you stopped proving and started being. You were told, struggle now so you can enjoy later. But later never came because struggle became your identity. You were told, money is the reward for suffering. But suffering only rewarded you with more reasons to suffer. Do you see now how deeply the lie runs? Chasing money is not movement toward wealth. It is movement within the state of lack. And movement within a state never takes you out of that state. It only explores it. You can rearrange scarcity 1,000 ways and still call it scarcity. This is why I say to you, stop hunting the shadow. Turn toward the light that casts it. Stop proving, start assuming. Stop reaching outward as a beggar. Start standing inward as an heir. The day you no longer wake up trying to get money is the day money will quietly begin to recognize you, not as a pursuer, but as its natural companion. And the moment that happens, the chase ends. Not because you have given up, but because you have arrived. From your earliest days, without your consent and without your awareness, you were trained into a posture toward money that was never meant for you. It was not taught openly, as one teaches a lesson in a classroom. It was taught quietly, through tone, through warning, through fear, through praise and punishment. Little by little, the idea was impressed upon your young and receptive mind that money was something to be feared, something to be worshipped, something to be begged for, and something that could abandon you at any moment. You heard the anxious voices of those who struggled. You saw the tight hands that clutched at every coin. You absorbed the unspoken tension when bills arrived. And before you ever touched money yourself, you had learned to shrink before it. Some were taught to fear it, as though it were dangerous, corrupting, something that would spoil the soul. Others were taught to feel guilt around it, as though to desire it were shameful, as though to enjoy it were a betrayal of virtue. And still others were taught to idolize it, to place it on a throne, to see it as the ultimate savior, the final proof of worth. Fear, guilt, and worship. All three are chains, and every chain leads to the same result: servitude. You were never meant to be the servant of money. And yet, look at the posture of the world. Look at the bowed heads. Look at the anxious calculations. Look at the countless hearts that rise and fall with a bank statement. This is not mastery. This is bondage. The servant of money wakes in worry. The servant of money works in dread. The servant of money rests only when the numbers allow it. He feels powerful on one day and worthless on the next. He does not live. He reacts. This is the subtle slavery that has been normalized. Not chains of iron, but chains of assumption. You were taught, quietly and relentlessly, that money stands above you, that you must earn its favor, that you must prove yourself worthy of its presence, that if it leaves, it is because you failed, that if you have it, you must apologize for it, that if you lose it, you must condemn yourself for it. And so, you were trained to kneel. Even those who appear outwardly successful often kneel inwardly. They fear the fall. They fear the loss. They fear the moment when the servant becomes the master again. And so they never truly rest. But hear me now, and hear me clearly. This posture is false. It was never ordained. It was never written into the fabric of your being. Money was never meant to be your master. Money was always meant to be your servant. Not because you dominate it with force, but because you generate it with consciousness. A master does not beg his servant. A master does not fear his servant. A master does not worship his servant. A master commands with calmness. A master relates with ease. A master rests in the knowledge that service is natural. You were trained to speak to money as a petitioner. You were meant to speak to it as a sovereign. You were trained to chase. You were meant to attract. For the true magnet is not effort. The true magnet is identity. As long as you see yourself as the one who needs, money will forever appear as the one who withholds. As long as you see yourself as the one who waits, money will forever appear as the one who delays. As long as you see yourself as the one who struggles, money will forever appear as the prize that demands struggle. But the day you shift inwardly, not outwardly, but inwardly, from servant to master, from beggar to heir, from pursuer to origin, the outer relationship must change to match the inner decree. Not because money is intelligent in the way a man is intelligent, but because money is consciousness crystallized, and consciousness cannot disobey itself. Now, what does it mean to move from slave to master? It does not mean arrogance. It does not mean cruelty. It does not mean indifference. It means something far simpler and far more powerful. It means you no longer ask money if it will stay. You assume that it does. It means you no longer plead for opportunity. You expect it. It means you no longer feel small when you think of wealth. You feel natural. The slave asks, "Will you come?" The master says, "You are here." The slave trembles at departure. The master assumes continuance. The slave is moved by circumstance. The master moves circumstance by state. And still the mind trained by years of fear may protest. It may say, "This sounds dangerous. This sounds irresponsible. This sounds like arrogance." But it is none of these. It is alignment. For what I am speaking of is not the domination of objects. It is the realization of source. The servant believes money gives him life. The master knows life gives him money. The servant believes money decides his safety. The master knows his state decides money. This is the reversal that sets a man free. You have seen it, perhaps without knowing its meaning. You have seen the rare individual who seems unafraid of money. He does not flinch when he spends it. He does not panic when he invests it. He does not worship it when it arrives. He does not collapse when it moves. There is a quiet authority in him, a softness that is stronger than effort. You may have wondered how such a one was formed. He was not formed by numbers. He was formed by assumption. He does not feel that money is above him. He feels that money moves with him. And because he feels this, the world confirms it. Now I will begin to open the door, gently but unmistakably, to the way this authority is expressed, not through ritual, not through strain, not through superstition, but through relationship. For you do not dominate money by ignoring it. You do not master money by despising it. You do not command money by fearing it. You establish mastery through how you address it and how you feel it. Not aloud at first, not in public at first, but in the hidden chamber of your own imagination. Every relationship you will ever have with money is born in the way you speak to it, inwardly. Not the words you use in conversation with people, but the words you whisper to yourself when no one hears. The tone of those inner sentences, the posture of being behind them. If you whisper inwardly, "I hope you don't leave me," you are still a servant. If you whisper inwardly, "You never stay long," you are still a servant. If you whisper inwardly, "I am not meant for much," you are still a servant. But the moment your inner language changes, the outer must follow. When you begin to feel, not force, not pretend, but feel, that money belongs with you, that it is natural to you, that it moves toward you as easily as breath moves into the lungs, then you are no longer a slave. You have become a magnet. A magnet does not chase iron. The magnet does not beg the filings to come. The magnet does not strain. It simply is what it is, and the world arranges itself accordingly. This is the first, quiet insinuation of the method, not as steps, not as a technique to perform nervously, but as a relocation of identity expressed through inner speech and inner feeling. How you speak to money inwardly, how you feel it around you inwardly. These two are not separate. They are one movement in two directions. You will learn and soon how to speak to it, not as an object, but as a presence. How to feel it, not as a hope, but as a companion. How to address it, not with tremor, but with calm familiarity. But for now, this is enough to see. You were never meant to kneel before money. You were meant to walk with it. You were never meant to worship it. You were meant to command it. You were never meant to fear it. You were meant to recognize yourself as its source. And the moment this recognition begins to dawn, not as an idea, but as a felt truth, the heavy chains that once wrapped around your thoughts begin to loosen. The inner voice grows quieter. The panic recedes. The need softens. You begin to move, not as one asking permission to live, but as one authorized by being itself. And from that moment on, everything that once felt like struggle begins to shift its character. Effort becomes expression. Work becomes movement. Money becomes response. And the old posture of slavery, the bowed head, the clenched jaw, the anxious counting, begins to dissolve like a dream fading in the light of morning. For you are remembering who you are, and money, which never disobeys the state, will have no choice but to remember its place as well. Now we move into the living foundation, the point where this teaching ceases to be an idea and becomes a relationship. For until now, you have been dealing with money as something distant, abstract, impersonal. Even when you feared it as one fears a storm in the distance. Even when you desired it as one desires a far-off shore. But now I must bring it close, so close that it can no longer be denied as presence. You must begin to understand that money, in its deepest truth, is not a thing. It is not paper. It is not metal. It is not ink. It is not figures written in a ledger. These are only the garments it wears. Beneath every garment is the same substance, consciousness, and consciousness is not cold. Consciousness is not deaf. Consciousness is not blind. Consciousness is presence, and presence responds. This is the great secret hidden openly in the scriptures, when all things are spoken to as though they hear. The sea, the wind, the mountains, the fig tree, the dead. This is not poetry. This is instruction. It is teaching you how to relate to what appears lifeless, yet is alive in imagination. Money is presence. Money is companion. Money is servant. Money is spirit clothed in form. Until this becomes natural to you, you will unconsciously continue to speak to it as though it were dead. And what is treated as dead cannot respond with life. You do not speak to the chair in which you sit. You do not speak to the dust on the road. You do not speak to the shadow on the wall. And so long as money is filed in the same category within your mind, lifeless, impersonal, mechanical, it will reflect that same dead quality in your world. But the moment you dare, gently and without strain, to treat it as presence, the entire relationship changes. You are no longer dealing with an object. You are entering into communion. This is not childish, and it is not symbolic. It is profoundly exact. For everything you behold is imagination made visible, and imagination responds only to voice and feeling. When I tell you to speak to money as a person, I am not telling you to pretend that your coins have ears in a physical sense. I am telling you to recognize that what you call money has its being in the same dimension as your thoughts, your feelings, your assumptions. And in that dimension, speech is command. Now I will take this from the heavens down into the ordinary. For the law must work in the kitchen, in the bedroom, in the hallway, in the marketplace, or it does not work at all. Consider your wallet. It seems a small thing, a container of paper, perhaps a few coins. Yet how many emotions pass through it? Hope, fear, embarrassment, relief, pride, panic. It is not neutral in your experience. It is already alive in your mind. You have already personified it through emotion. But you have done so unconsciously. Some open their wallet with dread, some with apology, some with shame, some with tension, and the wallet answers in kind. Now imagine instead that you open it as you would greet a familiar presence, not with drama, not with forced joy, but with calm recognition, as one greets one who belongs. You do not butter it with flattery. You do not insult it with fear. You simply acknowledge it. You may say inwardly, without strain, without ceremony, "You are always with me." So not as a hope, as a statement of relationship. And what you feel in that moment is far more important than the words. If you feel trembling as you say it, the trembling is the decree, not the sentence. But if you feel calm, familiarity, the calm is the command. So too with the bank. Most people feel small when they think of a bank. They feel judged, they feel examined, they feel dependent, they imagine themselves standing before a massive authority that decides their worth by numbers. And that posture alone establishes subservience. They may never consciously say, "The bank is above me," but they feel it. And feeling is what the subconscious obeys. So one speaks to the bank inwardly, as one speaks to a superior, with hesitation, with justification, with unease. And the bank answers in that role. It withholds, it delays, it denies, it looms. But another speaks inwardly, from a different state, not in rebellion, not in arrogance, but in quiet authority, as one who belongs, as one who expects response. He does not whisper, "Will you give me?" He assumes, "We do business together." He does not approach as one seeking permission to exist. He approaches as one participating in a natural flow. And the same institution behaves differently. Not because the clerks changed, not because the rules changed, but because the state behind the interaction changed. And everyone is only a messenger acting out the state you occupy. Even a bill may be spoken to. The world trembles before bills. They see them as demands, threats, punishments. The bill is personified as an enemy, and as an enemy it behaves. It arrives with dread. It steals sleep. It compresses the chest. It tightens the breath. But what is a bill truly? It is a symbol of circulation. It is proof that energy is moving through your world. It is not an enemy. It is a messenger. When you see it as a threat, you speak to it as a threat. When you see it as a demand, you answer it with panic. And panic reproduces panic. But if you dare to change the relationship, not by denial, not by bravado, but by inner authority, you can speak to the bill as a temporary visitor, already accounted for. Not with the voice of fear, "How will I ever pay you?" but with the tone of resolution, "You are already handled." And what you feel as you say, that is the seed. When you feel relief before proof, you are practicing the law in its highest form. You are making the end present. You are no longer reacting to what is. You are commanding what must follow. The world will tell you this is imagination, and they are right. But they do not know that imagination is the only causation there is. You see, when you begin to speak to money as presence, something subtle yet immense occurs within you. The distance collapses. The gap between me and it dissolves. You are no longer dealing with an outside object that must be hunted. You are relating to a state that must respond. The hunter runs, the companion walks, the beggar waits, the master assumes, the slave fears departure, the sovereign expects permanence. And this expectation is not forced, it is felt. You do not shout at the sun to rise. You do not plead with your heart to beat. You do not beg your shadow to follow you. You assume. And what you assume as natural becomes natural. Now I will say something that may sound strange to the outer mind, but will be recognized by the inner one as truth. The moment you speak to money as a person, you are no longer alone in consciousness. You have created relationship. And relationship is the true engine of manifestation. The man who chases money feels alone against the world. The man who speaks to money as a companion never feels abandoned. The first is always anxious. The second is steadily calm. And the outer world reflects that difference with ruthless accuracy. You may try this gently, not as a ritual, not as a superstition, but as an experiment in state. The next time you touch money, or the symbol of it, observe your feeling. Do not judge it. Simply notice it. The tension, the relief, the fear, the pride. These are not reactions to money. These are declarations to it. And when you have noticed, quietly choose another posture. Not excitement, not strain, not forced gratitude, but familiarity, as you would feel towards something that belongs with you. And you will discover that money begins to behave less like a wild animal and more like a domesticated presence. Not immediately, perhaps, for the old state will echo for a time, but the echo is not the voice. The present feeling is the voice. Remember this always. You do not manifest what you say. You manifest what you are while you say it. A trembling affirmation produces trembling results. A calm assumption produces stable facts. And so I do not yet give you the final decree. Not yet. For a decree spoken by a slave remains a slave's command. The posture must be transformed. First, you must become inwardly the one who expects response, the one who assumes arrival, the one who rests. For the deepest power is not in the sentence. It is in the state from which the sentence will soon be spoken. And when that state becomes familiar, the words, when they come, will not feel like magic. They will feel like description, not hope, not desperation, not longing, but simple recognition. And recognition is creation. What you call prayer has been misunderstood by nearly everyone who has ever spoken the word. They think prayer is what is spoken aloud in moments of crisis. They think prayer is what is whispered in desperation, mouthed in public, repeated by habit. But I tell you plainly from experience, your true prayer is your inner conversation, the quiet, ceaseless murmur of thought that never stops speaking within you. It does not matter what you declare with your lips in the daylight, if, in the secrecy of your mind, you are constantly confessing fear, absence, and doubt. The subconscious has no ears for speeches. It only hears the tone of your private voice. That voice is the law. That voice is the decree. That voice is always being obeyed. You may say aloud, I am wealthy, and yet inwardly mutter, I will never get ahead. And it is the latter, not the former, that becomes your world. For the outer world is the echo of the inner murmuring, not the performance of the outer actor. Every man is praying all day long. Every woman is declaring all night long. But few know what they are praying into being. The tragedy is not that people do not pray. The tragedy is that they pray without knowing they are praying, and so they pray disaster, loss, delay, and lack into their own experience. without ever intending to. Consider how often in a single day you say inwardly without sound, "This will never work. Why does money always leave me? I'm behind again. I can't seem to get ahead. Something always goes wrong." These are not passing thoughts. These are orders. These are not observations. These are assumptions spoken into law, and the world, obedient beyond words, rearranges itself to prove them true. Now we come to the great reversal. For if inner conversation creates chains, inner conversation must also create freedom. The same way you unknowingly trained money to avoid you through years of fearful whispering, you can now deliberately retrain it through a new inner speech. Calm, steady, unhurried, unforced. The secret is not to argue with your old thoughts. The secret is not to wrestle the mind. The secret is to replace the conversation itself. You do not chase a shadow out of a room. You light a candle. So do not chase your doubts. Light another voice. Begin with the simplest shift, not dramatic, not theatrical, quiet and natural. When you catch yourself inwardly saying, "Money is hard to get," do not scold the thought. Simply replace it with another that feels truer to the state you wish to inhabit. Money comes to me with ease, not forced, not shouted, but as a calm report. And when the old voice returns, as it surely will for a season, do not panic. Return again to the new tone. This is not battle. It is reconditioning. You were not taught to speak against money in one day. You will not reverse it in 1 hour, but you will reverse it inevitably if you persist. Every inner argument you have ever had about money was never really about money. It was about your concept of self. For one who believes they are small speaks to life as though begging. One who knows they are source speaks as though arranging. Listen carefully. Your inner dialogue always reveals who you believe you are. If you inwardly say, "I hope I can," you believe you are weak. If you inwardly say, "It never works for me," you believe you are unlucky. If you inwardly say, "I always get left out," you believe you are unchosen. But when you inwardly say, "Of course it works," when you inwardly say, "It always comes through," when you inwardly say, "Things arrange themselves for me," you have quietly shifted identity. And identity is the true magnet. Money does not follow sentences. It follows states of being. Now let us apply this directly to your relationship with money. From this moment forward, your inner dialogue with money must change its tone entirely. Not to flattery, not to pleading, not to excitement, but to quiet companionship. No more, "Where is it? When will it come? Why is it always missing?" These are the words of someone standing outside the door. Instead, let the new inner voice be, "It is with me. It moves with me. It grows with me." Not shouted, not argued, simply stated as fact, as you would state your own name. You do not argue your name into being. You assume it, and assumption is the womb of reality. Now I will speak very plainly. For most people, the reason money feels distant is not because they lack skill, or opportunity, or intelligence. It is because they are having the wrong conversation with it when no one is listening. They speak politely to others about finances, but inwardly they insult their own supply with fear and distrust. They speak bravely in public, but privately they despair. And the subconscious always sides with the private speaker. So tonight, not tomorrow, tonight, when you lay your head upon your pillow, I do not want you to ask for anything. I do not want you to beg the heavens. I do not want you to plead with forces outside yourself. I want you to change the voice in the room of your own mind. Let the last words you hear within be the words of companionship. Let them be simple. Let them be natural. Let them be calm. Money is with me. It rests with me. It moves with me. And do not wait for emotion to prove them. The emotion will follow the assumption, not the other way around. At first it may feel hollow. That does not matter. A seed beneath the soil also feels like nothing. But unseen, it is already working. You are not trying to convince the world. You are training the subconscious. And the subconscious does not respond to force. It responds to familiarity. So repeat the new inner tone, not with urgency, but with gentle regularity, as you would hum a melody you do not mind hearing again. Morning, midday, evening, not ritual, not strain, but atmosphere. Soon, without effort, Without reminder, you will notice the words begin to rise by themselves. The voice will soften. The fear will weaken. The old urgency will fade. You will no longer catch yourself panicking about supply. And it is at that point, when you least feel that you are doing anything, that the outer world will begin to rearrange. For manifestation is never loud in its beginning. It is quiet. It slips in through changed assumptions that feel almost boring in their simplicity. But the results will not be boring. You will notice unexpected relief, surprising timing, gentle openings, unforced provision. Not because you forced money to come, but because you removed the inner command that had been forcing it to stay away. Remember this. Each inner sentence is a line of code being written into your future. Speak carelessly, and the world will execute carelessly. Speak consciously, and the world will obey with precision. And now you begin to understand why I say the inner conversation is the true prayer. Not the prayer of the lips, the prayer of the identity. For prayer is not asking. Prayer is acceptance of the end. And whatever you accept as true in the silence of your being must, without exception, become the truth of your experience. This is not belief. This is law. And you are using it now. ChatGPT plus everything you have heard thus far would remain a hollow philosophy if it were not sealed by one thing: feeling. For feeling is not decoration upon thought. Feeling is not poetry added to words. Feeling is the substance itself. Thought is the mold. Feeling is the molten gold poured into it. And without feeling, no assumption ever hardens into fact. You may speak to money as a person. You may change the inner conversation. You may declare companionship, but if the feeling beneath those words is still fear, the law will answer fear. If the feeling is strain, the law will answer strain. If the feeling is relief, the law must answer relief. This is why I have said again and again, and I will not stop saying it until it becomes flesh within you. Feeling is the secret, not someday, not later, now. For the subconscious does not reason. It does not analyze. It does not weigh evidence. It moves only in response to feeling. What you feel to be real is real to it. What you feel to be yours is yours to it. What you feel to be secure is already secured in its world. Let us now move this out of theory and into experience. The first feeling that governs your money world is relief. Relief is the emotion of the wish fulfilled. Relief is what you feel when a burden has been removed. Relief is the exhale after a long holding of breath. Relief is not excitement. Relief is not shock. Relief is quiet. The poor feel excitement at money. The wealthy feel relief. Why? Because excitement means surprise, and surprise means you did not expect it. Relief means fulfillment, and fulfillment means you were already assuming it. So tonight, when you imagine money, do not chase the thrill. Chase the sigh. Let your chest soften. Let your shoulders drop. Let your breath deepen. Say inwardly, it is done not with drama, but with the weariness of one who no longer needs to fight. That weariness is holy. That weariness marks the end of striving. The next feeling you must cultivate is security. Security is not loud. Security does not rush. Security does not check the door twice. Security assumes protection is already in place. Most people attempt to manifest from insecurity. They imagine money while feeling unsafe. They picture abundance while bracing for loss. They affirm wealth while expecting collapse. And they do not realize that what they are really practicing is insecurity, not wealth. You cannot plant an oak in a hurricane of fear. The soil will never settle. So you must become familiar with the bodily sensation of safety. What does safety feel like? It feels unthreatened. It feels unhurried. It feels undecided about nothing. Spend time just feeling safe without reason, without needing proof, without justification. For once the subconscious accepts safety as natural, it will reproduce conditions that must justify that safety. The outer will always race to validate the inner. Then comes freedom. Freedom is the feeling of choice without consequence. It is the lightness that comes when no decision feels fatal. It is the ease of movement, the absence of internal negotiation. The enslaved mind must think 10 times before a purchase. The free mind moves without apology. Money follows freedom, because freedom is expansion, and expansion draws supply as naturally as lungs draw air. Begin to practice freedom inwardly, before you ever see it outwardly. Let yourself feel what it would be like to choose without fear, to walk without calculation, to give without loss, to receive without guilt. Do not correct the scene. Do not argue with your imagination. Simply let the feeling expand. Then there is stability. Stability is the quiet expectation of continuity, not what if it ends, but of course it continues. The unstable fear interruption. The stable assume perpetuity. Stability is not hope. It is confidence without effort. Those who feel unstable create cycles of financial chaos. Money surges, money vanishes, gains are erased, progress resets, again and again. But those who feel stability often cannot explain why their income simply continues. It does not thrill them. It does not shock them. It simply remains. Now we will bring this into micro scenes, for the imagination moves best, not in grand visions, but in simple moments soaked in truth. Imagine opening a statement, not with your heart racing, not with calculation, not with dread, but with neutrality, with ease. You look, you see more than enough, and you feel nothing dramatic, just confirmation. That feeling is wealth. Now imagine paying for something and feeling joy, not because you barely made it, but because giving feels light. You hand over payment without flinch, no tightening, no grieving, and afterward you feel no absence. That absence of absence is the sign of true possession. Now imagine receiving without shock. Most people receive money with disbelief. I can't believe this happened. That is not possession. That is surprise. Instead, receive as one who expected it, as one who knew it was coming, even if he did not know how. You thank. You nod inwardly, and you go on. This is the emotional posture that commands continuity. Now I will tell you something subtle but decisive. You cannot will yourself to feel these emotions. You allow them. Effort kills feeling. Acceptance grows it. If you try to force relief, you remain tense. If you try to force security, you remain alert. If you try to force freedom, you remain bound. But if you gently allow yourself to imagine the end already done, the body will shift automatically. The body always follows the mind when the mind truly accepts. This is why techniques fail for men who remain impatient. They seek results faster than the state is allowed to settle. They attempt to harvest before the seed has dissolved into the soil, and the ground resists them. When a man finally stops asking, "Is it working?" it begins working. Now here is an iron law. The state you feel as natural will express itself without consulting your logic. You do not need to plan the manifestation. You only need to normalize the state. You do not need to visualize for hours. You only need to feel the end as ordinary. Ordinary abundance manifests faster than extraordinary desire. So practice making your desired financial state boring, not dull, but familiar. The imagination obeys familiarity with ruthless speed. And now I will say this with absolute clarity. You are not trying to attract money. You are training your nervous system to stop rejecting it. The rejection is not logical. It is emotional. Some were trained to fear money. Some were trained to feel unworthy of it. Some were trained to expect loss after gain. Some were trained to associate supply with pain. And the body remembers these lessons even after the mind forgets. So when you feel resistance as you imagine ease, do not retreat. This is not failure. This is not failure. This is detoxification. The body is releasing old conditioning. Let the discomfort pass without commentary. Do not say, "This is hard." Do not say, "I'm blocked." Do not label. Simply return to the feeling of possession without urgency. Now I will give you a simple truth. Whatever you feel when you fall asleep is what you are planting. Not what you say. Not what you think. What you feel. If you sleep anxious, you plant anxiety. If you sleep secure, you plant provision. If you sleep relieved, you plant fulfillment. So before you sleep, do not rehearse your worries. Do not organize tomorrow's fears. Do not argue with yesterday's mistakes. Instead, lie in the silence and feel that your life is already handled. Not imagined as future, handled now. Let the last sensation in your body be completion. That feeling will work while you sleep. You do not need to help it. You cannot improve it. You need only to allow it. The law is automatic once impressed, and now you begin to understand why many repeat affirmations for years without change. They affirm abundance while feeling scarcity. They declare power while feeling powerless. And the subconscious, faithful servant that it is, carries out the true order, the feeling, not the phrase. From this night forward, your discipline is not verbal, it is emotional. Guard your feeling as you would guard a flame in wind. If fear enters, replace it not with argument, but with calm. If doubt arises, replace it not with force, but with reassurance. If the old anxiety returns, do not fight it, soften into relief. Relief is the solvent of lack. And now, slowly, without urgency, you are being rewired. The urge to chase weakens. The itch to worry fades. The habit of checking loosens. And the world, seeing that you no longer signal hunger, will stop withholding. For the universe does not test you, it only mirrors you. And the mirror is turning now. Fear is the one emotion no one wishes to examine honestly. And yet it is the very root from which nearly every condition of lack grows. Men speak endlessly about effort, strategy, opportunity, timing, but they almost never speak of fear, though fear is the silent governor behind most financial lives. Fear does not shout, it whispers. And what it whispers is always the same hidden prayer. I do not have. I may lose. I am unsafe. And the law, obedient beyond judgment, answers that prayer with precision. Understand this deeply. Fear is not an emotion. Fear is an assumption. It is the assumption that supply is fragile, that security is temporary, that loss is natural, that abundance is accidental. And whatever you assume as natural becomes your natural world. When a man fears money, he handles it nervously. When a woman fears money, she monitors it obsessively. When a household fears money, its decisions tighten, shrink, and contract. Fear teaches you to grip. Gripping teaches money to slip. This is not punishment. This is reflection. The moment you fear that money may leave you, you have already declared that it does not belong to you. And the law will never allow you to experience ownership over what you believe does not belong. Fear is permission for departure. The strange thing is that people believe they fear money because they lack it, when in truth they lack it because they fear it. They believe the emotion follows the circumstance, when in reality the circumstance is only the frozen shadow of the emotion. A frightened man sees risk everywhere. A peaceful man sees paths everywhere. Both walk through the same world, but not through the same reality. Now I will tell you something that may at first appear cruel, but is in fact liberating. No sum of money will ever cure fear. For fear is not healed by possession. Fear is healed by certainty. And certainty is an inner posture, not an outer condition. There are men with millions who sleep in panic. There are men with modest income who sleep in peace. So do not deceive yourself into believing that the arrival of money will heal the fear. It will not. The fear will only rise to defend itself in a new disguise. The only way fear is dissolved is by replacing its assumption with another assumption that renders fear irrational. Fear says it can leave. Certainty says it cannot leave. Fear says it may fail. Fidelity says it always returns. Fear says I am temporary. Belonging says I am chosen. These are not affirmations. These are identities. When a man feels chosen, he is not anxious. When a woman feels belonging, she is not desperate. Fear only exists where the self feels accidental. So to remove fear, you do not fight the symptom. You change the identity beneath it. Now here is the decisive truth. You were trained to fear money before you ever had the power to think. You heard it in the words of elders. You saw it in the anxieties of parents. You absorbed it from the atmosphere of urgency around you. And before you ever made your first financial decision, your nervous system had already been taught that supply is dangerous. You inherited fear before you inherited language. This is why logic cannot remove it. You can prove safety on paper and still feel threat in your chest. You can demonstrate abundance with numbers and still tremble at the thought of loss. The fear is not intellectual. It is somatic. It lives in the body. And the body obeys feeling, not evidence. So the work before you is not to argue fear. The work is to teach the body safety. And safety cannot be taught through words alone. It must be impressed through repeated emotional experience. This is why I have led you again and again into the feeling of relief, into the atmosphere of security, into the posture of quiet possession. Each time you do this, you are overwriting the old fear memory with a new certainty memory. At first, the fear will protest. It will say, be realistic. Don't get your hopes up. You've been disappointed before. Protect yourself. Fear always disguises itself as wisdom. Do not be deceived by this. Fear has never protected you. It has only kept you from receiving. What it calls protection is actually retreat. What it calls caution is actually contraction. Money cannot flow into a clenched nervous system. Water cannot fill a sealed vessel. Now listen carefully. The law does not remove fear for you. The law simply obeys the state that includes fear. If fear remains, it will obediently reproduce more situations that justify fear, not to punish you, but to mirror you. So freedom begins not when money comes, but when fear leaves. And fear leaves when belonging is assumed. You must now allow yourself to feel that money belongs with you, in the same way your name belongs with you, not as an object, as a relationship. You do not fear that your name will abandon you. You do not worry that your shadow will betray you. You do not anticipate that your breath will desert you, not because these things are guaranteed in reason, but because they are assumed. Assumption is stronger than logic. Assumption is the only power that creates facts. So replace fear with three silent pillars: certainty, fidelity, and belonging. Certainty does not rush. It does not check. It does not test. It knows. Fidelity expects return. It does not punish absence. It assumes loyalty. Belonging feels ownership without strain. It does not prove itself. It simply is. When these three become natural in you, fear has nowhere to live. Fear needs uncertainty to breathe. Fear needs insecurity to survive. Fear needs the idea of abandonment to exist. When you remove the soil, the root dies. Now notice what happens when fear leaves. You stop overworking. You stop overproving. You stop overcontrolling. You begin to act from sufficiency rather than deficiency. This alone rearranges opportunity with alarming speed. Men trust those who do not beg. Life opens to those who do not plead. Money follows those who do not chase. Not by strategy, but by state. Now I will tell you how to dissolve fear in practice when it tries to return, as it surely will for a time. Do not interrogate it. Do not analyze it. Do not shame it. Simply do not identify with it. Let the fear speak as a cloud, passing through the sky, not as the sky itself. Then quietly shift into belonging. Say inwardly, this belongs with me. This remains with me. This returns to me. Not like a charm, like a report. The report of what is already decided. As you do this again and again, the fear will weaken. It will protest less. Its urgency will fade, and one day you will suddenly realize that the thought of loss no longer moves your body. That is the true miracle, not the arrival of money, the disappearance of terror. For once fear is gone, money will no longer need to fight for entry. The doors will already be open. And when money comes after fear has left, it behaves differently. It stays differently. It multiplies differently. It circulates without trauma. For it is not just entering a new bank account. It is entering a new nervous system, and the nervous system sets the ceiling of every life. This is why two men with equal income live in completely different realities. One lives from anxiety. One lives from trust. One counts to survive. One counts out of curiosity. One fears spending. One enjoys circulation. One fears loss. One assumes continuity. And the world keeps rewarding both accordingly. Remember this as law. You cannot be rich where you are afraid to rest. Rest is the signal of faith. Strain is the signal of unbelief. You do not rest in what you expect to leave you. So tonight when fear rises, and it may, do not wrestle it. Do not call it mistake. Do not push it away. Let it pass while you return to certainty. Certainty is quiet. Certainty is gentle. Certainty is unstoppable. And when certainty is restored, money will have no command but to follow it. Because money never follows words. It never follows effort. It never follows longing. It follows the state that no longer fears its own supply. And that state is rising in you now. You have now reached the quiet turning point where practice becomes being. Everything before this moment was preparation. Everything after this moment is inevitability. For there is a great difference between doing a thing and being the one to whom the thing belongs. In the beginning, every assumption feels like repetition. You remember to speak inwardly in a new way. You remember to return to relief. You remember to feel security. You remember to replace fear with certainty. At first, it feels like discipline. It feels intentional. It feels learned. But the law does not reward discipline. The law rewards naturalness. For whatever feels natural to you, you no longer question, and whatever you no longer question, you no longer resist. And whatever you no longer resist flows into your world without delay. In the early days, you may still feel as though you are doing the state. You say inwardly, "Money is with me," and a second later, the old voice may return. Do not judge this. This is not failure. This is simply the old momentum dissolving. A river does not stop the moment the source is changed. It slows as the old current drains away. Each return to the new state weakens the old one. Each moment of calm weakens the old urgency. Each sigh of relief weakens the old tension. And over time, without warning, the strain disappears. One morning, you will wake and notice you did not worry. One afternoon, you will spend without calculation. One evening, you will pay without tension. And you will not even notice it as a miracle. It will feel normal. That is the sign. When it becomes normal, it becomes unstoppable. When it becomes natural, it becomes inevitable. For the subconscious does not discriminate between possible and necessary. It only discriminates between what feels foreign and what feels familiar. What feels foreign is delayed. What feels familiar is accepted without debate. This is why a man can struggle for years to receive what he does not feel natural having, and another can receive easily what he would never think twice about claiming. The difference is not worth. The difference is identity. You do not attract what you want. You express what you are. So now I speak to you not as one who is learning to be abundant, but as one who is learning to wear abundance as identity. Identity is not what you declare. Identity is what you assume without announcement. The wealthy man does not say, "I am wealthy" in his mind all day long. He simply moves from the assumption that supply is present. His decisions reveal his identity without a single affirmation. So your work now is to let go of the effort of maintaining the state and allow the state to maintain itself through familiarity. At first, you repeated relief deliberately. Soon, relief will return on its own. At first, you chose security consciously. Soon, you will forget what insecurity felt like. At first, you resisted fear actively. Soon, fear will feel foreign. You will not feel like you achieved this. You will simply feel like you are this. This is the sacred transition from faith to fact. Faith always requires maintenance. Fact requires nothing. Let me show you how this transition happens gently, without strain. In the early stages, you practice inner shifts at specific moments, when fear rises, when bills appear, when decisions arise. But as the state settles, you no longer need the moment as a reminder. The new posture becomes continuous. You wake in it, you move in it, you sleep in it. You no longer think, "I should feel abundant now." You simply feel relaxed as a baseline. This is the moment when money stops feeling like a subject and starts feeling like an environment. Air is not a subject to you. Gravity is not a subject. Supply will become no more a subject than these. And this is why I say to you, do not rush this stage. Do not force it. You cannot force naturalness. You can only outgrow the old strain. When you find yourself forgetting to practice, rejoice. That is not laziness. That is embodiment. Now let me warn you of the final test that appears at this stage. The temptation to check. Checking is the last symptom of unbelief. You will feel the urge to check your account more often. You will feel the urge to measure progress. You will feel the urge to verify. Do not condemn this urge, but do not obey it compulsively either. Checking is an echo of the old identity trying to reassure itself. The new identity does not need reassurance. The one who trusts does not verify constantly. The one who assumes does not inspect nervously. So when the impulse arises, pause, not in resistance, in acknowledgement. Say inwardly, "Of course it is handled," and move on. Each time you do this, you loosen the last threads of dependency. For the final bond that must be broken is not lack. It is hypervigilance, the anxious need to monitor supply. That posture alone recreates the belief that supply is fragile. But supply is not fragile in the natural state. It is assumed. Now I will tell you something quietly profound. The moment you stop trying to manifest money is often the moment it begins to flow the fastest. Because trying is effort. Effort is strain. Strain implies absence. Once you simply are, the contradiction dissolves. And here is the paradox that confounds logic. The less you emotionally need money, the more freely it circulates to you. Not because you stopped wanting it, but because you stopped needing it as proof of life. Need is contraction. Assumption is expansion. Money cannot resist expansion. Now we speak of inevitability. I use that word carefully. Inevitability does not mean suddenness. Inevitability means unavoidable outcome. A seed planted in fertile soil does not hurry. It also does not fail. Once the assumption has become natural, the harvest is no longer conditional. It is simply a matter of visibility. You may not see the bridge yet. You may not know the path. You may not predict the timing, but the end is sealed. When a state becomes natural, the world reorganizes itself quietly and relentlessly to match it. People remember you. Doors open without effort. Ideas appear unannounced. Opportunities feel ordinary. Provision arrives without drama. Not because you became clever, but because you became congruent. The world does not resist congruence. Now look back in memory. Think of something in your life that once felt impossible and now feels obvious. Once, it may have required courage. Now it feels normal. You do not congratulate yourself for it. You do not struggle to maintain it. You simply live it. Money will become that. Not something you think about with intensity. Not something you fear losing. Not something you glorify. Just part of your environment. This is the difference between a condition and an identity. Conditions fluctuate. Identities persist. When the wealthy state becomes who you are, rather than what you attempt, life no longer tests your faith. It simply expresses your nature, and nature does not wobble. Let me give you a final marker of this stage, so you may recognize it when it arrives. You will stop talking about money emotionally, not with excitement, not with fear, not with obsession. Your words about money will become plain, neutral, uncharged, and neutrality is mastery. The man who is trying to get rich talks about money constantly. The one who is rich rarely does. Speech follows identity. When your tongue relaxes around the subject, your being has accepted it as normal, and what is normal endures. So do not rush to prove. Do not rush to convince. Do not rush to demonstrate. Rest into the state until the state rests in you. From repetition to routine. From routine to reflex. From reflex to nature. And when it is nature, you will not say, I believe. You will simply know. And knowing is the end of seeking. Now we come to the moment where the unseen begins to dress itself in visibility. You have planted the state. You have assumed the feeling. You have carried the identity until it became natural. And now the world must respond, not because you demand it, but because it has no choice. For life itself is the bridge. You will not design the path. You will not predict the sequence. You will not control the timing. And this is precisely why it will astonish you. The intellect always expects money to arrive through the channel it already knows, through the familiar door, through the predictable corridor. But imagination is not bound to your habits. It sees routes you have never walked. It uses hands you have never shaken. It opens doors you did not even know existed. This is what I call strange providence. Not strange because it is chaotic, but strange because it bypasses the calculations of reason entirely. When the state is assumed, the world rearranges itself in ways that appear accidental, coincidental, even miraculous. Yet nothing is accidental. Everything is lawfully ordered by the state you now occupy. You may find money arriving through restitution. You may find it through forgotten debts. You may find it through inheritances that were never expected. You may find it through opportunities you never sought. You may find it through people who suddenly remember your name, not because you chased them, but because the state pulled them. This is the great mystery of the bridge. Every plank appears only when your foot is ready to step upon it. You never see the entire path in advance. You only see enough to continue walking, and that is intentional. For if you could see the entire bridge, fear, and pride would interfere. You would attempt to manage what you were only meant to trust. Let me tell you something from experience. The most perfect bridges always appear foolish at the beginning. They do not look like provision. They look like irrelevance. The first movement often seems unrelated to money entirely. The conversation, a letter, a delay, a cancellation, a sudden change in direction. The mind protests. This is not what I asked for. And yet months later, you realize that single moment was the pivot upon which the entire harvest turned. I have watched this happen countless times in the lives of those who dared to assume the end before seeing the means. One man assumed abundance quietly. He felt secure without knowing how it would unfold. Weeks passed. Nothing appeared to change. Then one evening he was invited casually to a gathering he nearly declined. There by chance, he spoke with a man who later became the partner that transformed his entire financial life. Another felt the state of having more than enough without any visible reason. Soon after, a distant relative passed and left an inheritance no one had predicted. It was not planned. It was not strategized. It was simply the echo of state. Another assumed ease and freedom with money. Days later, a refund appeared from a place he had forgotten. Then another. Then an opportunity he had once dismissed returned with new terms. Notice something essential. None of these bridges were strained into existence. None of them were forced. None of them occurred through pressure. They occurred because the state demanded expression. You see, once the inner cause is impressed, the outer world becomes obedient. People move without knowing why. Circumstances align without understanding the order they serve. Events collide in perfect sequence without announcing their purpose. And you, standing in the middle of it, will often say, "I could never have planned this." And that is precisely the proof that you did not plan it. You assumed it. Providence does not ask your permission to arrange your life. It only asks your consistency of state. Now you must understand something that will free you from anxiety forever. The bridge does not depend on your encouragement. It does not require your support. It does not wait for your belief each hour. Once the state is natural, the bridge is being built even when you forget about it. This is why the most powerful manifestations often occur when you are not thinking about them at all. Because thinking is not creating. Being is, and life obeys being without debate. You may go through periods where nothing visible seems to happen. No letters, no payments, no sudden changes. And yet, beneath the surface, unseen meetings are already scheduled. Unspoken decisions are already being made. Movements are already underway. Do not confuse invisibility with inactivity. The seed works in darkness long before it breaks the soil. So when reason whispers, "Nothing is moving," answer gently within yourself, "Everything is moving. I simply cannot yet see it." This assumption keeps you aligned with the bridge without strain. Many fail not because the law fails, but because they abandon the state during the invisible season. They remove the seed from the soil to check if it is growing, and in doing so, prevent it from growing at all. You must let the earth do its work. Now I will tell you something subtle and deeply liberating. The bridge is never built to make you anxious. It is built to make you faithful. If you needed to worry in order for things to work, the law would be cruel. But it is not. It is precise and merciful. Your task is not to supervise the process. Your task is to remain the state. Remain the one for whom supply is natural. Remain the one for whom ease is normal. Remain the one for whom resources arrive without drama. If you do this, providence will always outrun your fear. There will be moments when events seem to reverse. Opportunities delay. Arrangements appear to collapse. Funds seem to retreat. These are not failures. These are reconfigurations. When the bridge must take a better shape, the old plank dissolves. When the path must redirect, the old road crumbles. What looks like loss is often alignment. I have seen fortunes born from what first appeared as endings. I have seen doors close only to reveal entrances no man could have predicted. Never interpret movement through the lens of panic. Always interpret it through the lens of alignment. You do not know which disappearance is making room for which arrival. So when something leaves, say quietly within, "Good, the bridge is shifting, and it will." Strange providence does not consult your preferences. It honors your state. Now let me speak to you about the subtle miracle that accompanies true bridge building, the removal of effort. When money begins to arrive through providence rather than pursuit, you will notice a profound change in your body. The tension leaves, the breath slows, the mind rests. You realize you no longer have to orchestrate your life. You only have to occupy it from the right position. This is the difference between a puppet and a king. The puppet is moved by circumstances. The king is served by circumstances. Not because the king struggles harder, but because his position commands without effort. And this is what the law returns you to. Position, not struggle, not chase, not stress. Position. Now I will tell you something the world rarely tells you. The most stable wealth does not come from hustle. It comes from state. Hustle may create bursts. State creates continuity. Hustle burns the nervous system. State calms the nervous system. Hustle says, I must fight for life. State says, life supports me, and life always agrees with the statement you wear. So when the bridge forms under you, you will not feel surprised. You will feel recognized, as though life simply remembered who you always were. This is why many who awaken to this law describe their harvest with a strange quietness. They do not shout, they do not boast. They often say, it just happened. And that is the language of inevitability. For when something is inevitable, it does not arrive like a miracle. It arrives like a confirmation. So if you ask me now, how will the money come? I answer you honestly, in the only way it can, through the perfect chain of events that your state demands. No two bridges are alike. No two sequences match. But every bridge is precise. Your work was never to design the bridge. Your work was to become the destination. And now that you are becoming that destination in consciousness, life must carry you there. Not aggressively, not chaotically, but with strange, quiet, sovereign precision. So tonight, as you lie down, do not ask how. Ask only, who am I now? And if your answer is calm, certain, and unburdened, then the bridge is already under construction, and you will walk it without fear, because you will not be walking toward money. You will be walking from abundance, and abundance always leaves footprints behind it. There comes a moment in the journey of every man and every woman when the object that once seemed so powerful begins to lose its final authority. Money arrives, supply flows, doors open, the struggle eases, and yet, if you are awake, something far greater begins to stir within you. You realize that what you sought was never the true prize. It was only the signpost that pointed you toward it. For the law can give you many things. It can give you bread. It can give you shelter. It can give you comfort. It can give you freedom from anxiety. But the law does not give you your true identity. The law only prepares you to recognize it. Money is a shadow, a faithful shadow, yes, but still a shadow. It follows the form that casts it, and the form that casts every shadow in your world is not money. It is I am. When you first began to change your inner conversation with money, you believed you were speaking to something outside yourself. You imagined a presence. You created a companionship. You shifted your tone, and the world answered. It had to. But now you are ready to see what was hidden in plain sight all along. You were never truly speaking to money. You were speaking to consciousness itself. You were speaking to the very source that animates all forms. Money responded not because it is alive in itself, but because it is animated by the same life that animates you. The same awareness that says, I am in your heart, also says, I am in every object, every circumstance, every opportunity you behold. This is the great unveiling called the promise. The promise is not that you will become rich. The promise is that you will awaken as the one who creates riches. The law rearranges effects. The promise reveals the cause. The law changes conditions. The promise changes identity. The law teaches you to command states. The promise reveals that you are the state from which all commands proceed. When the promise begins to awaken in you, something extraordinary happens. Your attachment to outcomes softens. Your fear of loss dissolves. Your dependence upon form collapses. Not because form disappears, but because you finally know what stands behind it. You no longer say, what if the money goes? For who fears the shadow when they know themselves to be the sun? You no longer cling. You no longer bargain. You no longer tremble before appearances. You rest. And this rest is not indifference. It is sovereignty. I speak now not as one repeating doctrine, but as one who has stood in the midst of that awakening. I tell you that there are experiences prepared for you, not by effort, not by discipline, not by repetition, but by divine appointment within your own being. Moments when the curtain is drawn back, and you recognize yourself as more than the body you walk in, more than the circumstances you occupy, more than the story you once believed about yourself. And in that recognition, all fear dissolves. For what is there to fear when you discover that you are the very source you once prayed to? This is why money was never meant to be your master. This is why it was never meant to be your God. This is why it was always meant to be a servant, a symbol, a shadow of your greater dominion. When you awaken to I am, you do not despise the shadow. You bless it, you allow it, you enjoy it, but you are never ruled by it again. You may still experience abundance, often more than ever. You may still enjoy beauty, ease, opportunity. You may still move through the world with grace and provision, but you do so without fear. You no longer say, if I lose this, I am nothing. You say, even if all forms pass, I remain. The promise is not the destruction of the world, it is the revelation of its meaning. The world exists to reflect your awakening. The law teaches you how the mirror moves. The promise shows you who is standing before it. At first, the law feels like power. Later, the promise feels like home. At first, you seek to change circumstances. Later, you realize circumstances only exist to confirm identity. This is the great arc of the journey, from hunger to mastery to recognition, from needing to commanding to being, from saying, how can I get, to knowing it already flows from what I am. And this is why even your work with money was sacred. It was never merely about supply. It was about showing you that the world obeys consciousness, that the visible bows to the invisible, that form answers to state, that shadows follow light. Every time money moved in your life, after you changed your assumption, it was whispering the same truth, you are the cause. And every time fear dissolved, it was another veil lifting. You were not being trained to be wealthy. You were being trained to be awake. Now I speak to the deeper part of you, not the one concerned with circumstances, but the one stirring with recognition. There will come a moment, perhaps in silence, perhaps in sleep, perhaps in an instant of stillness, when the meaning of I am will no longer be a phrase to you. It will be felt as presence. And when that presence dawns, the question of money loses its old weight entirely. For the one who knows himself as source never again imagines himself as dependent. He uses the law, yes. He blesses abundance, yes. He enjoys form, yes. But he is no longer hypnotized by it. This is why I have always said, use the law, but seek the promise. Use the law to feed the hungry. Use the law to clothe the naked. Use the law to lift the burdened. Use the law to free yourself from anxiety. But do not stop there. Let the law lead you to the revelation of your own divinity. For money can fill your hands, but only the promise can fill your being. And when the promise unfolds in you, you will discover that you were never truly seeking wealth at all. You were seeking recognition. You were seeking stability that could not be lost. You were seeking a foundation that could not shift. You were seeking yourself, and you have always been the treasure. This is why the scriptures say the kingdom is not found in observation, not in location, not in possession, but within you. They were never pointing to land. They were pointing to identity. So now, as this journey of money and imagination ripens within you, I offer you this final understanding. Use the law gently. Walk with abundance lightly. But let your heart rest only in I am. For when you know yourself as I am, you will never again fear lack. Not because money will always be present, though it often will, but because you will know that the source which creates money is what you are. And that source has no boundary, no shortage, no delay, no end. You were not born to struggle in shadows. You were born to awaken as light. And when that light is recognized, the world will continue to follow, but you will no longer be chasing it. You will be walking in the quiet dignity of one who knows, I am the beginning. I am the cause. I am the source. And all shadows will fall faithfully behind you, just as they always have. And now we arrive at the stillest moment of the journey. Not the loud triumph, not the outer proof, but the quiet recognition that changes everything forever. For before there was ever a coin in your hand, before there was ever a number on a page, before there was ever effort, fear, or striving, there was only awareness. And that awareness was you. You spent years believing you were chasing money. You ran after it with labor, with worry, with calculation, with hope and disappointment. You thought it moved ahead of you like a distant horizon. But now, standing here in this silence, you may begin to see the great inversion of the truth. You were never chasing money. Money was waiting for you to stop kneeling before appearances, waiting for you to withdraw the hidden prayers of fear, waiting for you to remember who speaks behind the world. It was waiting for you to rise into your own authority. For all these years, it could only follow the state you wore. It could never violate your assumption. It could never disobey your identity. It followed you when you assumed lack. It retreated when you assumed struggle. It flowed when you assumed ease. It always obeyed perfectly. Not your wishes, not your hopes, but your being. And now I speak to that deeper being directly. You are not the one who waits for provision. You are the one from whom provision proceeds. You are not the one at the mercy of circumstance. You are the circumstance maker clothed in flesh. You are not the echo, you are the voice. You are not the shadow, you are the light. The world has taught you to see yourself as a fragment, moving through forces greater than you. I tell you the opposite. The forces are fragments, moving through you. This is the final decree that ends all chasing. I am the source from which my world flows. Say it not as an affirmation, say it as a recognition. For the moment you truly see this, not intellectually, but inwardly, the entire struggle collapses. The old slave identity dissolves. The old fear reflex loosens its grip. The world ceases to feel hostile and begins to feel responsive. You no longer wait to pursue. You wait to allow. You no longer reach outward for permission. You stand inwardly as authority. And this authority is not harsh. It is not rigid. It is not loud. It is calm. It is steady. It is merciful. It is the authority of the shepherd, not the tyrant. So now, in this closing silence, I offer you not a technique, not a method, not a repetition, but a seal. Not something you do, something you accept. Let it be accepted in the deepest chamber of your being. I am the one whom money serves. I am the one whom life supports. I am the one through whom supply circulates. I am the one through whom abundance breathes. Do not repeat it in urgency. Let it descend in peace. You do not need to convince yourself. You only need to stop contradicting yourself. And now I leave you with this final blessing, not as a man speaking to another man, but as consciousness speaking to itself across the veil of form. May the illusion of struggle fall from you like an old garment. May the anxiety that once governed your nights release its claim. May the heavy breath of lack be replaced with the slow breath of certainty. May the days ahead unfold not in pressure but in order. May what you need find you without force. May what belongs to you recognize you without delay. And when the outward world confirms what the inward world has accepted, as it surely will, may you not be intoxicated by form, but quietly strengthened in truth. For the true miracle is not the money that arrives. The true miracle is the one who wakes up to receive it without fear. Now I send you into the night, not as a seeker, but as one who has remembered. Rest from effort, rest from bargaining, rest from chasing. Let the silence work. Let the assumption breathe. Let the state continue without strain. And whatever rises to meet you in the days ahead, whether gift or delay, opening or pause, receive it with the quiet knowing of one who understands. Everything is rearranging itself in obedience to what I have become. Go now in peace, and let the world answer you, as it always has.